Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. Some good news tonight for the future of Zoo Montana.
After losing its accreditation 8 years ago, the zoo and members of the community have been working hard to get that accreditation back, and it's paid off.
Zoo Montana making that big announcement today that it is once again accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums.
Q2's Zoe Zandora has more on why the accreditation is so important for our state's only zoo.
It's humbling and sometimes it's overwhelming to how much this community has come together for us.
Jeff Ewelt, the executive director of Zoo Montana, emotional as a day like today comes after some grueling years of peaks and valleys for Zoo Montana, fighting to get the AZA, or the Association of Zoo and Aquariums, recognition after losing it 8 years ago.
It was embarrassing. We had lost respect of the community, so it just wasn't a good time here.
AZA is the primary accrediting body for zoos and aquariums in the United States and has been for more than 40 years. U.S. agencies such as OSHA and the USDA consider AZA standards as the national standard when evaluating institutions.
I'm a big believer every good city needs a good zoo, and so when Zoo Montana started having the issues it did, I didn't want to see it go to the wayside.
Zoo Montana has had its peaks and valleys in its 25 years, and in 2011, the zoo lost its AZA accreditation due to the lack of financial stability. Zoo Montana was inspected by the AZA once again in May of 2019, and after evaluation, Ewelt says they finally have their golden stamp of approval back.
It's been 8 long years since Jeff Ewelt and his team have been slowly chipping away to get the AZA accreditation back for Zoo Montana. And as far as Ewelt's concerned, he's going to try hard to never let that golden stamp of approval ever get taken away from the zoo again.
Ewelt says the biggest obstacle he believes for Zoo Montana is the finances, things like public support in the way of a tax levy or a bond. But he says they aren't using that as an excuse.
Not making excuses for who we are. The biggest obstacle, though, is that funding and just getting folks to understand that we grow a lot slower than some of the other big city zoos. And that's because we don't have that check coming in every year from the city or the government. 8 years, I had this vision that we'd be here, and I didn't think 8 years it was going to take, but it did. It took a little longer than we wanted. But regardless, we're here. And for me, it's a personal victory and something that I'm so incredibly proud of.
In Billings, Zoe Zandora, MTN News.
Thanks, Zoe. Now, with accreditation, Ewelt says Zoo Montana is focused on future conservation projects and will continue plenty of community events and involvement.
Well, Billings drivers, a big heads up for the next year. North and South 27th Street in downtown Billings will soon see the first part of a major improvement project.
The Montana Department of Transportation is set to spend about $13 million upgrading traffic signals, pedestrian crossings, and new pavement from end to end. Q2's Mitch Laggy talked to state engineers at a public meeting today and is standing by now in the newsroom with those details. Mitch.
Well, Russ and Jeanelle, this project was originally slated to start back in July, but there is only one manufacturer that makes the new streetlights, so the Department of Transportation had to wait. Starting next week, crews will start work on replacing the old traffic signals and improving pedestrian crossings. At the tail end of this year's construction season, MDT expects to replace the lights and pedestrian crossings from the South 27th on-ramp to 4th Avenue South. Picking up next spring, crews will pave the entirety of 27th from Airport Road to the South 27th Street on-ramp. Drivers in Billings should expect some short delays during the construction.
There'll be some delays. 0 to 15 minutes is about the most, but there'll be two-way traffic the entire time through the entire project. There'll be access to every business, either through the front or the back, but every business will still have access. All the approaches will have access.
And the construction is slated to start next week and go until the snow hits. Work will pick back up in the spring with an expected completion date of October 2020. Jeanelle?
All right, thanks so much, Mitch. In other news tonight, a 2-vehicle head-on crash southwest of Laurel sent 3 people to the hospital this morning with severe injuries and shut down Highway 212. One person was transported by help flight and 2 others by ambulance. Tonight, Montana Highway Patrol tells us there's no word on the conditions of the 2 drivers and a passenger, but Trooper Barry Mitchell says all 3 suffered severe injuries in that crash. And traffic was diverted around the area on White Horse Road to the old highway.
After nearly 24 vehicles were vandalized in Laurel over the past few weeks, one man and 2 boys have now been arrested in connection with the damages. Connor Polkowski and 2 unnamed juveniles are facing charges of felony criminal mischief for using a slingshot to shoot marbles into the windows of 22 vehicles. The 3 also admit to vandalizing another 17 vehicles in Billings.
Well, turning to the weather scene, Bob McGuire, we tied a record today.
Oh, another hot one. 94 degrees was the old record set back in 1979. Yeah, we got it. And that got us thinking, what about what happened? How late into September can we get where we still see 90s? And so here's the answer. These are what we found. You can go all the way. Obviously, today we got to 94 degrees, but back in 1963, we topped out at 90 degrees on the last day of September, and actually had to go all the way to October 4th. Of 1963, where we still hit 90 degrees then. So, yeah, we can still get some 90s this time of year and all the way into the first week of next month. Hopefully we don't do that very often. We are looking at a big change in the weather coming your way later tonight. It's a strong cold front that'll keep us cool for the rest of the week. We'll have more on that in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks, Bob. Well, the results are in for the 2019 ACT, and according to State Superintendent Elsie Arntzen, the 19.6 composite shows Montana has some work to do when it comes to getting students ready for college and the workforce. Now, this year's result is the same as 2018, but lower than 2017 and 2016. This was the largest group of students to take the test at 9,566. Now, despite the drop in composite score, the state saw an overall boost in math and language arts proficiency. Most Montana universities prefer a 22 or higher ACT score, and only about 3,000 of Montana high school juniors scored that in this last round of testing.
Now we go to Yellowstone National Park, where August visitation statistics have been released. This year, the park saw a slight increase from August of 2018. Yellowstone hosted just over 800,000 visitors last month, bringing the year-to-date total to more than 3 million. Park officials urge travelers to plan ahead and say always check those current conditions before arriving.
Well, Glacier National Park has until the end of the month to decide whether to allow e-bikes into the park.
MTN's Marin Sue has more on that.
E-bikes are rising in popularity in Montana, and people could be seeing them soon in Glacier National Park. Owner-operator of Wheaton Cyclery, Hans Axelson in Kalispell, explains how riding an e-bike differs from a traditional bike.
Kind of like having a hand on your back or suddenly feeling bionic again.
Axelson says don't expect the bike to look or feel like a motorcycle.
It doesn't have a throttle on it. It does have assistance, and there's 4 levels of assistance. So you can either be in an eco mode, which is very light assistance, tour, sport, or even a turbo mode.
Edward Albright with Sky Eco Rentals in Columbia Falls says e-bike rentals account for 20% of his business this year, and he personally enjoys riding e-bikes. He says it gives him more freedom.
Normally I can do 3 or 4 miles on a pedal bike. I can do 30 or 40 on an e-bike.
The difference between electric bikes and normal bikes is this electric motor. This electric motor provides extra power assistance while biking that normal bikes just simply don't have.
However, Albright says there have been concerns allowing e-bikes in the park.
The concerns seem to be more geared to rudeness, as far as people with e-bikes zooming past pedestrians or other traditional bicyclists.
The simpler models of these e-bikes only go up to 20 miles an hour. Superintendent with Glacier National Park, Jeff Mouse, says he has until the end of September to take all of this into consideration and decide on the park's e-bike policy.
You could blanketly just allow e-bikes everywhere you allow traditional bikes, and at the other end of the spectrum, you could say no to e-bikes. And for that, there's got to be some compelling visitor safety or resource issue why you would make that determination.
Mouse says the public will have the park's e-bike policy by the end of this month, but as of right now, e-bikes are not allowed in the park. In Glacier National Park, Marin Sue, MTN News.
And Mao says once the policy is in place, if there are concerns for resources or public safety, he can adjust that e-bike policy at any time.
Well, there's more news from across our state on tonight's MTN 9 o'clock news. The danger of vaping has become a national topic recently. And today we take a look at the role it's playing with high school students in Bozeman.
But first on tonight's Q2 530 News, the Out of the Darkness Walk shining light on a major problem across our community, state, and country. will update you on its efforts.
And in sports, Jess Lockwood delivers a big weekend on the PBR Tour. Scott shows us if it vaulted him back to #1 in the world.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.